super excited to have you all because, as probably many of you who are joining, hiring is something that is near and dear to my heart and very near and dear to a lot of the panelists who are here on the screen. Let's talk about why we're all here today. And hiring, I know, it can be a very hot topic. Hiring can matter for so many different reasons. In many cases, it can help build the foundation for what a future team is. I know many of the folks here have built a team from scratch or nearly scratch. And with that, there is, who you bring in can matter for many different reasons. Some of it is, you are building up the knowledge of your team. You are highlighting when you're coming into a hiring process, where are there gaps in your current team, or where do you want to see, and making sure that you're filling those with who you're bringing in. It can also allow for more innovation. If you bring in somebody who has different industry expertise or a different skill set, you can help bolster new ideas and a new way of working across everyone, and really have that multiplier effect. You can also help build a more diverse culture. You can help align with what you want to see in the future, as well as, of course, the thing we all know, hiring. It has to do with growth and really developing our teams for the future and seeing it move over time. With that, I'll go ahead and also pass it back over to Nina to talk a little bit about the event overview today.
Yeah. So today's conversation is really going to be diving into how are we elevating our teams. But before we go into that and introduce our amazing panelists, I do want to take some time to remind everyone, or even introduce everyone, to the wealth of resources that we have at PreSales Collective for both hiring managers as well as job seekers. We have a wealth of opportunities and resources, and I highly recommend leveraging those, especially as your role and your process might evolve. You might start from a seeker, become a hiring manager, and maybe you're growing your team further. So I want to make sure we're taking some time just to showcase everything that's outside of this space before we dive into our exciting panelist conversation. So some great resources to highlight within PreSales Collective is first and foremost our PSC job board. This exists through our PreSales Collective website, and this is a space where you can post a role if you are currently hiring, or you can post your own candidacy if you are currently looking. It's a great space to kind of connect with people who are already in the community and continue the conversation, especially if you're looking to grow your team or join a new team. So highly recommend, first and foremost, checking out the PreSales Collective job board. Next great resource is our Slack community. I know there's a lot of people in the PSC Slack, but I want to highlight some really great channels, especially related to hiring, job seeking. That could be a really fruitful place for managers to come together as well as seekers to come together. These are some channels that I have found to be super helpful in the space. Definitely the topic of management and careers has definitely been a very helpful one through our community. So as y'all are engaging more, feeling like I might be stuck with my process, how do I bring this to the next level? Engage in the community. This is what PreSales Collective is all about. We're bringing thought leadership together, individuals together to make sure we are continually evolving and improving our amazing profession. And then another resource I do want to highlight is PreSales Academy. So beyond our community at PreSales Collective, we also offer enablement programs. PreSales Academy is our enablement program for career changers who are looking to make the shift into the pre-sales profession. So the students that we bring in are really ones who are excited to launch their careers in this profession and are looking to leverage the skills that they've developed over the years in a completely new setting. So what we do at PreSales Academy is, first of all, we provide opportunity. We provide opportunity for job seekers to come in, learn and refine their skills and make sure they're ultimately a good fit for this profession. But also, we are helping professionals, managers like you hire at the end of the day. We like to make sure that ultimately our academy students get to land at a great company. And that's why we're here to also help you hire and expose you to some really great career changers who have the right attitudes and gumption to really contribute to your team. Because ultimately, we are really on a mission to make sure that the pre-sales profession is one that is diverse from all different backgrounds and is very inclusive going into the future. So just a little bit more insight into our program. The students who go through Pre-Sales Academy really are, what we like to say, they're highly trained, they're highly vetted, and they also come with a lot of support. So our students definitely have a high percentage of diversity amongst our populations. They also have a very high success rate with the companies that they're landing with. And so if you are interested in exploring and partnering with Pre-Sales Academy to either explore our graduates or even work with Pre-Sales Academy to kind of give back to the community, please reach out. We will definitely be showcasing and sharing the web pages and links to sign up post-event. But we have a quick form for you, and we would love for you to kind of join in the conversation and learn more about Pre-Sales Academy. Before I hand it off to our panelists, just a little bit more insight into what our cohorts offer. We're very much focused on, hey, how are we really changing the space when it comes to the future of pre-sales, making sure that our cohorts are really focused on bringing in more female non-binary talent as well as non-white talent. So that is what we're here for at Pre-Sales Academy, expanding the profession. And for all of you here, as you are continuing your exploration of either finding a role or looking to expand your team, we hope that you take advantage of all these amazing resources at Pre-Sales Collective, because this is a great way for you to continually benefit from those in the profession. That being said, I'm going to hand it back over to Liz so we can get into this panel, because I am super excited for you all to learn from the great thought leaders in this space.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Nina, for going through that. And I'm so excited to get to introduce you to all these wonderful leaders. I have worked with each of these folks in a variety of ways. And I guess with that, I should introduce myself and who I am. My name is Liz Anderson. I'm the Director of Learning and Enablement over here at PreSales Collective. What does that mean? Because I know some of you might not know that we have enablement programs at PreSales Collective. So I have PreSales Academy under my purview, so help make sure that we have career changers come in and get the right types of information that they need, so that they can land great jobs and have what I consider the best job that there possibly is. And I also work with foundations and Leader Elevate. If you haven't heard of those, definitely recommend you check it out on the PreSales Collective enablement website. Really, it's about helping the wonderful world of pre-sales learn and grow, and honestly give folks the ability to learn faster than when I was learning, because I know I wish I had this information when I was just starting out. I have been in the pre-sales world for over a decade, started off more from the implementation side of things, and then found my way over to this wonderful job. And now I am lucky enough to be able to help folks in their career journeys, whether they are just starting off or have been in it for a while. Hiring is something that is really near and dear to my heart, something that I did quite a bit over the past couple of years before I made the switch over into Pre-Sales Collective. And with that, I would love to have the panelists introduce themselves, and I will go ahead and go who is to my right. And Sydney, I would love for you to introduce yourself.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Sydney Gomez, and I'm a director of solutions consulting at 6 Sense. I've been in tech for about 10 years now, starting as a social media community manager and managing different communities, answering questions, and have had a number of roles in my time to get to the best team ever of pre-sales. And I manage our commercial team. So in 2021, I was promoted to build a team from scratch and have the immense challenge of going from 0 to 6 to 8 in less than a year, and making sure that we had fostering the best talent, finding it and developing it. So definitely a passion point for me to move very quickly, but with intention as well. So very excited to be here and hear from all the panelists as well.
Thanks so much, Sydney. It's great to have you on and share your expertise, especially building a team completely from scratch. Adam, I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adam Burgess. I have the pleasure of managing the Solutions Engineering Academy at Smartsheet. So a little bit of background. I've been in pre-sales for, oh, goodness, 14 years. I had a lot more hair back then, in a variety of capacities. As a solutions engineer, as a team lead, a manager, and as the academy lead now. My background has historically been in healthcare IT, and at the organization that I worked for, we had a major emphasis on hiring people that were relatively inexperienced and coaching them up over time. So that's where a lot of my expertise as I've moved forward in my career has really come from, in that perspective of how do you take somebody that has a core set of skills or soft skills and then coach them up with the technical skills and round that out to fit the pre-sales role and prepare them for success in the field. Since 2009, I've been with Smartsheet in a variety of capacities, but they decided that they were going to build an academy program of their own with the very same intention of ramping up relatively new SEs, helping to diversify the folks that we were bringing into the organization and helping it scale up more effectively. And so it's been my pleasure over the last few years helping to create that program on the fly while we have been helping to ramp up the capacity of the team overall. So I'm really excited to share some of those learnings over the years.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Adam. I love having your unique experience here because I feel like you're going to have a very also unique perspective on hiring processes, and especially doing it at a large scale like you have been doing. Wonderful. Sarah, I'm going to pass it on over to you.
Hi, everyone. Sarah Newman. I lead one of our solutions engineering team here at Slack. I've been at Slack for over 5 years now. I spent 3 years in the field and the last couple in management. Similar to Sydney, also building teams quite a bit over the past couple years. So learned a lot about hiring on the fly. I think a lot of hiring managers do. So I love the mission of this webinar to really kind of put a point on some of that. I'm really passionate about bringing in women and underrepresented folks into the pre-sales business. I co-led the Slack Women's Employee Resource Group for 2 years of my tenure, some of my in the field, some of my in management. So got some different perspectives there, but I really think it's the most underrated job in the business. So exposing it to folks who may not have discovered it in other capacities is always my mission. So I'm super excited to chat with everybody today.
Awesome. So glad to have you on, Sarah, especially with all the work that you've done to kind of like expand what being an SE means and like bringing people on board. I know I've seen it firsthand and love the work that you always do. Now I'm going to pass it on to Rosa.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. My name is Rosa Williams Oyeneye. Very glad to be here to offer the talent acquisition HR side of the house. So I have 10 years of talent acquisition experience. I've worked for 3 technology companies. And at these companies, I've had the opportunity to recruit for sales, pre-sales, and technology engineering hiring. Currently, I am at DocuSign, and we have a really robust pre-sales organization here, and just glad to be here today.
Thank you so much, Rosa. It's great to have you on. And I love the completely opposite end of the spectrum with this, like the talent and the HR side of things, which I feel like you can't talk about hiring without also having that perspective, because we really do so much in tandem. So thank you for being here today. And last but not least, Nina, I'd love just for you to introduce yourself so everyone knows who you are.
Yes, should have done that earlier, but hello everyone. My name is Nina Berger. I am the Senior Career Services Manager with PreSales Academy. So I handle the admission side for PreSales Academy, as well as the career placement and employer support side of PreSales Academy. So I get to experience kind of the student side as they're seeking jobs and working with employers on what they're looking for in a candidate who is going to join their team. So happy to be here and super happy to learn more from our panelists.
Fabulous. Well, now that we've introduced everyone, you all kind of have an idea of who everyone is, where they're coming from, and a little bit of their background. I'd love to move us into some of our prepared questions that we have for you all, and I think you're going to get some great feedback on this. So we'll go ahead and start with Adam. I would love for you to tell us a little bit about what specific skills or traits or mindsets are really essential for a successful pre-sales professional, especially in today's competitive landscape.
Ooh, we're starting with a big question there. Okay. I'll do my best to do this in a succinct manner. All right. Yeah, you mentioned it first, competitive landscape, right? Organizations are looking to do more with either the same group of resources or fewer resources. So how are we building teams to maximize impact while being mindful of, keeping our existing team well supported and making sure that we can continue to support the business through this natural churn that takes place. When I look at what's important from the SE perspective, we're hiring for a highly specialized set of skills that's applied in a generalist fashion, right? So you really need to be able to have somebody that can operate in multiple capacities at once. So I'm looking at your personal attributes, your more intrinsic skill-based attributes. This is what I would consider to be the least important set of competencies because much of this can be taught, all right? You're also looking at those interpersonal skills. What's their EQ? How dynamic are they? Can they operate in a multifaceted, multitasking environment? How adaptable are they? And then lastly is mindset. And I consider that probably the most important attribute because that's how you get your elite performers. That's how you're going to get those people that stick around and deliver really high impact, not just to their team, but across the whole organization. So, if we're going to get more specific from, that personal attribute or skill set basis, what kind of technologies do they have experience with? What kind of background do they have? Do they have verticalized experience? Those are things that can help you accelerate quickly out of the gates. And lots of that can be gleaned from a CV or a resume. So it's pretty easy to gather those insights. From an interpersonal basis, I'm looking for people that feed off of people, that rise to that challenge of building connections and turning negative experiences into positive experiences. But that's also not just in a customer-facing perspective, but also internally, because our clients are our sales reps, our clients are our peers, our clients are the leadership in the organization too. So how do they take that dynamic and turn that inward to the organization? Are they peer helpers? Are they peer leaders? Are they people that look at a project and say, I want to be part of this. How can I make everything in my organization better? Are they strategic thinkers? Are they looking at all levels of impact of the decisions that they are making or the projects that they are finding involvement in? And are they working to help accelerate or improve overall processes? These are things that I'm trying to figure out in the interview process as to whether they have an interest in this. This is engaging for them. And, oftentimes we'll ask questions to try to glean that, but it's really important in terms of developing a positive culture. And lastly, we're kind of getting into this a little bit already, but mindset. I want people that find ways to say yes, fundamentally, right? We're looking for people that are going to have that impact in the long run, that, are going to be positive contributors to the culture, that are going to help enable and build up their peers, that are looking at their peers as people that their success helps to drive their own success. Because ultimately, we are a team-oriented profession. We're not out there with our own quota to fulfill. We've got tons of people that we need to help. So the mindset has to be, get on my back and I'll get on yours, and we'll help each other get through. Every day is a new opportunity for innovation. So, sales has that saying, ABC, always be closing, right? When I look at the pre-sales team, I'm thinking ABI, always be improving, always be innovating, always be improvising, always be taking the initiative. That's what I want to see out of a successful pre-sales profession.
I love that. So many great nuggets of insight in that. Anybody else have anything that they would like to add or contribute? I'm going to say that was a pretty well complete answer. I know I don't have much else that I would add either. So that's great. Thank you so much, Adam. That is a wonderful insight. I started off with a meaty question. You gave me a meaty answer. I love it. Sarah, I would love from your perspective, how do you balance the technical expertise with communication and interpersonal skills when evaluating pre-sales candidates?
Tough one to follow, Adam, but I will give it my best shot. Great question. I think I can't take credit for this saying. Someone said this to me, but someone once told me that there are sales engineers or solutions engineers with a capital S and sales engineers with a capital E. And I think a great team is a mix of both of those. And there's not one that's better than the other. Sometimes your team might need kind of one that is more capital E, one that is more capital S, but there's always a place for both. And folks can kind of learn the other skill set if they know what they're strong at. So sussing out technical expertise, I think can be hard. It depends a lot on the type of organization you're working for. At Slack, you don't need to be super technical, but you need to be ready to learn and ready to memorize and ready to kind of analyze technical questions and understand what the question behind the question is so that you can give a thoughtful answer. But folks who are really technical also do well and contribute back to the team. So being able to suss that out can vary a lot. I think something that is really telling is often in the presentation or demo phase of an interview process, particularly if you're asking them to do research on the product that they're interviewing for. How much have they self-served some of that kind of like intel that they need to learn in order to deliver it back to you, or at least kind of they can't know everything, they're not part of the company yet, but what have they kind of gone digging for that they can deliver back to you, I think is a good way to suss that out. But I think balancing that with communication and interpersonal skills, sometimes I just think a lot about the basics. Like, is the person rambling? Can they be succinct? Because I think in sales, like we all know, being succinct is kind of paramount. You only get so much mind share from a customer. Is there meeting management there? So if they're giving a demo or presentation, or even if it's kind of a free-flowing chronological interview or something like that, are they time checking with you? Are they looking at everyone who's on the interview panel and asking, or engaging with each person or following up with the relevant person? I think sometimes those basics are, they seem like a given, but they often aren't. And the really excellent candidates have that kind of stuff down pat. And then the last thing, I think, really relating to what Adam was talking about, is like, we're really looking for folks who want to get in the weeds, who are passionate and excited about the product. And I think that comes through kind of in all of that management, whether you're trying to get across something technical, whether you're trying to get across like, this is the type of person that I am. If you're excited about being part of the product or have some enthusiasm about it, it comes through. And I think those are the people who tend to be most successful. So, yeah.
I love that. And I will say, I feel like you absolutely can tell when somebody is passionate about something versus if someone is just like, yeah, I'm take this interview because it's just a job and I want a job here. Love that. Anything to add from the rest of the crew?
The only thing I would add is keeping up with updating all of those different requirements, because I think sometimes we launch these and relaunch stale job descriptions, and it's not actually accurate and reflective of what we need from a candidate in that given time frame. And so working with recruiters to make sure that we're setting the proper expectations with each and every hire to say, hey, I was looking for that last year, but now I'm actually more flexible and open to these different traits. How can we put that into the job description to really be clear and upfront with our expectations of candidates?
I love that, Sydney, and I think it's so important. And it kind of leads into our next question, which is for Rosa, which is how can you effectively communicate the unique demands and opportunities of a pre-sales role to potential candidates?
Absolutely. So this is hitting on the job description, right? This is that initial communication that you're going to have and an opportunity to really get what your organization needs out in front of candidates. And the first thing you're going to think of is, hey, what do you want to call this? We know that pre-sales professionals have so many different titles, from solutions engineers to sales engineers. I have never seen so many titles in my life. But what you want to do, especially now, since you have AI and how that's impacting businesses, or maybe your organization is cybersecurity, you can get as specific. You can say, hey, we're going to hire a cybersecurity solutions specialist, or you can be as broad. So really kind of honing in on what do I really need and what do I want to call it, I think is the first order of business. And then of course, in every job description, you're going to really want to talk about the responsibilities that the person is going to perform. And I think that's key. Performative responsibilities. What are they going to be doing in this role? Some organizations now have gone as far as outlining the first 3 months, outlining the expectations in the first 6 months. So you can be as structured or as general as you want there, but just make sure it's highlighting what they're going to be doing, not only the experience they need for the role. Um, and then I think, it's very important to understand that this is a hybrid environment now. This is a remote environment. Things have kind of changed. Work-life balance has become more important. So really digging in on the soft skills that you need for someone to be able to operate in whatever environment you have. If you know one for this role is highly collaborative, you're dealing with a lot of different business stakeholders, you're going to want to highlight those competencies that you're looking for right there up front in the job description, so that people are not surprised that, hey, I'm having to do product demonstrations for C-level executives. I didn't know that was a part of the role. Well, if you put it in the job description, they will know that, hey, good communication skills is paramount for this role. So I think those are a few things. And a lot of organizations now are really leaning towards wage transparency right in the job descriptions. Clearly, we don't want to hire people who are outside of the scope of what we're offering for the roles, who maybe, they're worried about trying to pay their bills, trying to live. And we want people who can fit within the scope of what we're hiring for and what our budget is allotted for the role. So those are some important things I'd say from like a talent acquisition and HR standpoint with your job descriptions.
I love that. And I think it all comes down to everything you talked about is transparency and communication is key, especially within these job descriptions, and making sure that, potential candidates know exactly what they're in for, because when you do that, guess what? You're going to get a better candidate out of that. Anything else anybody wants to add from the panel?
I'll just add one thing there. From the perspective of organizations that are hiring people that are changing careers, it's really important that the candidate has an awareness of what the role is on a more intrinsic level. Rosa, you mentioned how many titles there are applied to this role, there's a lot of confusion about exactly what pre-sales really means. So, when meeting with my recruiters, I really try to encourage them to share links to pre-sales resources. I point them to Pre-Sales Collective, to any video content, leveraging the power of networks like LinkedIn. So talk to an SE before you actually get to the interview with the frontline manager. So, that can make, for one, a better interview experience, more impactful one, but also it helps screen out a lot of candidates that might be thinking they're applying for an engineering role when they're actually applying for a pre-sales role, because there is so much confusion around that job description.
It's a great call out, Adam. And especially, if there's also roles that are we use for pre-sales that are also used for other roles as well. So, you gotta understand what you're applying for. Love that. All right. Sydney, I'm going to pass it on over to you with a question, which is, what are some of your interview techniques or questions that have helped you identify top pre-sales talent?
I love this question because I have a lot of opinions on it. So first, techniques. I firmly believe that every single candidate has something incredible and unique to offer. It is not an interrogation to trap you and make you feel like crap. I actually edited myself. I want that to be noted, but it is a conversation to see if you're a fit for this role, for this company. And so from a technique perspective, I'm not going to be a robot and say, here are my 10 questions that I must ask you today in order to validate, but I also just want to get to know you. I'm probably too conversational, which has led to some really interesting stories in my career, but I firmly believe that we shouldn't be throwing candidates off balance to test them and see how they react, because that doesn't happen a lot in our roles. And if we think that they're dealing with assholes a lot, then we should rethink some things. But anyway, so that's from a technique perspective. In terms of questions, while I don't have a set question for every single candidate I meet with in terms of the exact flow, there are 3 really important things I'm saucing about and 2 specific questions I ask every interview. The first one is I always like to give them an idea of the role, myself, just really introduce that piece. And then I always just say, tell me about yourself. And Adam, Sarah, you talked about succinct delivery. How can you tell a story? It is amazing when you just give someone an open question to start the interview like that, what you get. And so I just love to see what is someone's base and then dig in from there. Like, hey, you talked about XYZ. Can you tell me more about that? How did that come to fruition? And really just using that as the baseline and starter for so many other fruitful opportunities to get to know that person. And then my 2 questions I ask in every interview. So if you're listening to this and you ever interview with me, I expect ace answers. And I can't take credit for either one. I didn't come up with them, but I think they're incredible, because the first one is I always love to ask people about a time they failed and what they learned from that experience. And what I'm sussing out there is, 1, do you have the humility and ownership, because we all mess up, right? To accept and understand that. And how do you rebound from that experience? That's literally all I'm looking for. It's not a test to say, is the failure big or small enough? It's just, can you own up to things that you've done? And how do you correct them? And how do you respond to them? Because then that gives me information around, if you come on my team and you fail, how do you want to be coached? How do you want me to support you? What are some things you're working on? That's huge for me to understand. And then the second one is, what are your 3 non-negotiables for any company you work for next? And what I'm doing there is I'm trying to understand, do your values and your expectations of a company and a role fit in with mine? Because I can tell you, 6 Sense is not an easy company to work for. I actually tried, as much as I said I didn't interrogate people, I kind of try and scare people about the work, the partnership, the expectations, because it is a lot. We have a really complex product. We grew from 300 people to 1,300 people in the 2.5 years I've been here. So there's a lot there, and it's not a company for everyone. Just like I think Coke, it's not everyone's favorite soda, right? And so it's really sussing out, do what you believe in and what you care about match up with what I think works here. So that's my shtick.
I love those. Those are some really, really great, great questions and ways to think about it. Anything that the group would like to add?
I just wanted to add that, like, I so identify, Sydney. I'm rooting for everyone in the interview process. I'm like, I'm on your side. I'm trying to qualify you in rather than qualify you out. But one question I learned kind of interviewing at Slack that I wanted to add to your list of go-to questions. And actually, this was one I learned from Liz. Liz and I worked together at Slack for a long time. We've been through a lot of interviews together. She's an excellent interviewer. But what would your manager at this role that you might have been talking about say was your strongest point and your weakest point at that role? And I think it's another way of asking, like, what are your strengths and weaknesses, but it gets them out of their head a little bit of saying it of themselves. So it helps to kind of be like, what would someone else say about me? I thought that was a really informative question.
Happy to give that to you, Sarah. And anytime. I love that. And I love that so many times. I think people think on the other side of the table, we're like trying to, what are you, and like figuring out how to get them out. But no, a lot of times we want to see somebody succeed. And during the interview process, you're also getting a view for what it's like to work at this company, because if you're going to be highly critical, it's going to be a highly critical work environment. If you're going to be inclusive, it's likely going to be a very inclusive work environment. Not always, but typically. Of that. All right. Where am I? Adam, I would love to pass the question back over to you, which is, what steps or initiatives have you seen successful in promoting diversity in pre-sales roles?
Oh, I love this one. So first off, there's no one step that's going to improve diversity across your organization, because representation matters at all levels of your org, from leadership on down. And that's part of creating a culture. So you're not going to solve it just with hiring for pre-sales professionals. However, that in mind, there are certainly things you can do as an org, as a department, to help promote diversity within your ranks. So Academy was one such initiative. One of the major objectives of that program was to essentially eliminate that glass ceiling or glass floor that exists towards entry into tech. You have tons of talented, dedicated professionals out there in a variety of careers that just need a point of entry to be able to get a chance to develop some hard and soft skills, get coached up, and then begin that professional journey. And that's really, one of the most impactful ways that you can improve diversity, because that pays dividends not just for your organization, but then in every subsequent role that they take for the rest of their careers. So when they go on to Slack or 6 Sense or wherever, that continues to pay it forward. So we look for people in talent pools that have a lot of the things that parallel the pre-sales role, serving multiple groups of stakeholders with a variety of different needs and value bases. So teachers, social workers, therapists, nurses, people in technical capacity. There's so many roles out there that are just enormous feeding grounds or groundswells for pre-sales talent that are really not being properly utilized or explored right now. You put up stats for PSA around diversity. We've seen a lot of similar increases in the amount of diversity at Smartsheet because of what we've been able to do with the Academy program. And honestly, it's the best part of my job, is learning about the impact that, creating these opportunities has on people's lives. I mean, you have intergenerational stories that are leading up to this one moment that allows somebody to take that next step and to be able to pay it back to their family, or to be able to realize the goals of a lot of years of effort. So, you just need to be able to provide a point of entry and the opportunity. And sometimes that's going to require a little extra coaching, but what you're also going to get is enormous dedication, loyalty, and enthusiasm for the role. So, we've seen nothing but great things from a DEI perspective on our front.
I love that perspective, Adam. And I know I'm obviously very biased here, but I've also hired several career changers. And I will say the career changers that I have hired, even though a little bit of extra work up front, they have been some of the most dedicated and like growth oriented folks on my team. And you see a lot of folks nodding their heads here. I feel like it's a very universal experience. I want to keep us moving here just for time. I want to make sure that we have enough time to get to questions. So I'm going to move on to Sarah and ask you, what are some of the best practices for retaining and nurturing pre-sales talent once they're on board?
Yeah. And particularly pre-sales talent, I feel like we invest so much in solutions engineers, sales engineers. Like our onboarding at Slack, you're not taking calls until at least 2 months in, if not 3. And so that's a lot of investment in terms of onboarding. So you really want to make sure that the talent is happy and they're maintained and they feel a sense of belonging at the organization. I mean, I think part of that in nurturing them is going through that onboarding, maintaining good onboarding, making sure they have the tools that they need so that they can be ready. But one aspect I thought of in thinking about this question that really makes people, I think, stay at companies is having a really well-established network, feeling a sense of belonging. So we have onboarding buddies. I think a lot of companies practice that sort of thing. So somebody going through it with you every step of the way. They're in the field and they're able to kind of give you feedback from what they're seeing to get you up to speed. But also something that I think about doing as a manager is making warm introductions around the business for the new hire. And so part of like, if they're in this 2-month onboarding, maybe every week it's giving them 2 or 3 folks. It's like, hey, have a 30-minute coffee with this person this week that they can then kind of choose to follow up on, especially if we're hybrid or not in the office. It's so much harder to make those connections. So that's a big part of what I focus on. And then just another component, trying to keep this succinct for time now, that I think about is just being really clear and proactive on career progression. I think often it almost feels a little early when we have those conversations. You're like 3 months in, you're just 1 quarter in, and you're like, oh my God, we're already talking about like career progression and what my objectives are. But I think when someone feels like they're on a path and they know what's next, it often keeps them in the business. We've spent a lot of time defining competencies of what makes a good SE in this business. That is a lot of work for leadership to do, but it's worth the time to do that so that folks have really clear expectations of what it takes to move from one level to another. And that when you're consistently talking about it, it helps a lot. So.
I love that. And I think one of the things that I love, Sarah, is you put into practice those things really well. It's that belonging as well as the steps needed to move forward and knowing what those next steps are. Because yeah, it's it definitely makes a difference. I'm sure we've all been in those places where it's made a difference if you are if you have that career conversation in the first like 3 to 4 months, it completely changes things versus, hey, you're a year in and now you're just starting to have your first career conversation. Love that. And of course, I'm muted. Rosa, I'd love to move on into you and talk a little bit more about industry trends. I'm curious, from your perspective, how has the landscape of pre-sales talent acquisition evolved in recent years? And what trends should organizations be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to pre-sales talent has to keep up with the rapid innovation that's going on in the business, and I think it's undeniable right now that AI, right, has impacted businesses. It has impacted the consumer these days. And the job of someone in pre-sales is, hey, how do I translate these technologies, these new innovative technologies, to various business stakeholders, right? So that means keeping up with some of these trends, being knowledgeable, being able, I would say, to make data informed decisions through data analytics has been becoming more and more imperative to this role. Some larger organizations, they may have a pre-sales analyst, someone who is dedicated, right, to supporting the solutions engineers. But the key way to differentiate yourself as a professional is to know that stuff, right? And to really be able to understand it and utilize it. So I think those are some key trends that are probably not going away, that are hotter than ever right now for some tech companies. And I think the way people can keep up with it is just to continue improving your capabilities, continue to learn, continue to get certifications, and just, as I want to say, Sydney said it before, update that, continue to update that. Organizations are going to update their job description. So you, as a professional, you have to continue updating your skills as well.
I love that. Thank you for that answer, Rosa. And got one last question here, Sydney. Really quickly, can you tell us what advice you have for hiring managers and recruiters who are looking to improve their pre-sales talent acquisition process?
Yes, super simple. Hiring managers, if you're not 90% yes, you're a no. Recruiters, regularly meet and make sure that you're setting expectations with hiring managers so that you have alignment and consistency across conversations and really wonderful candidate experiences. Is that quick enough? I didn't time myself.
I love that. No, I think that's wonderful, Sydney. And I've seen that we've gotten some great questions in the chat. Nina, I'd love to pass it on over to you to ask some of those live.
Yeah, one that stood out to me, because I love this question, was from Jesse about they firmly believe that curiosity is vital for pre-sales, but also very difficult to evaluate. So a question for the group, and I might hand it over to Adam to start, is how do you gauge curiosity in candidates?
A great question. Some of that is going to be intrinsic. It comes across in how they interact with you in the interview process. If I've got an SE that's treating this thing almost like a discovery call, they're leaned in, they're asking questions, they're trying to learn more about what work is going to be like there, what the culture is like. That indicates to me a certain degree of curiosity. Somebody that's got the ability to, think of this conversation as a human conversation is also going to be inherently more curious. Do they care about the people that they're interviewing with? How does that come across? So some of this is intrinsically evaluated. There are some questions you can ask, so I like to ask folks, about a new app or a new piece of software they've been using lately, and, get them into a conversation about that. And you can tell really quickly how much they like to delve into technology and how they like to find ways to apply it. That's a really good indicator of curiosity on my phone. I'm sure there's some other ideas out there.
Yeah, and I can add to that, as a recruiter, we're going to be asking open-ended behavioral questions. We're going to, seek examples from those candidates, of, hey, how have you adapted to new technologies? What kind of industry trends are you aware of right now? How has that changed how you operate or had to pivot? So there's tons of questions that you can ask to really hone in on if someone's a lifelong learner or if they're just here and just going with the flow.
No, I love asking those questions that really dive into, like, what do they want to learn? How are they being that instigator in their learning to dive deeper? I think that all feels into curiosity. So I appreciate y'all giving those insights as well. Another question I got from the chat, and I'll open it up to anyone, but this one was interesting. I had to Google this term, but do y'all have any leveling frameworks in place when it comes to kind of your hiring of staff. So the individual says they use a lot of judgment today for leveling, which aligns to expertise, aligned to business and technical competencies, but they want to be fair when bringing in folks in based on their expectations for compensation versus their assessment of their skills. So let's dive in. Who has used any kind of leveling frameworks for kind of like their hiring practices?
I have. So I've brought people in both from an IC3 solutions consultant perspective and IC2 associate solutions consultant. And then we really work on getting promotions to the next level of senior IC4. So very intimately familiar with that. I think it depends on the maturity of your organization that you're applying to and understanding their company size, because there is going to be more banding and leveling at larger companies than probably your startup vibes. And that means that at that point, you're having different competencies to check across the board and years of experience that we're looking for in order to justify those different levels you're coming in at and pay bands. And so I think that's at least at 6 Sense. Sorry, Rosa, but like that's a conversation with the recruiter more than the hiring manager. And then also working with us to just understand where you fall in that compensation layer so that you don't go too far down your skis, and understanding the level that we're looking for. So in that initial conversation, coming back to curiosity too, what is the hiring manager looking to add right now? What's important to them? One, that's going to help you when you get to me, and thank you. But then two, it's really going to help your expectations as you get to the finish line.
Nice. No, very well said, Sydney. Thank you so much for answering that. Because yeah, it definitely differs on where you're at and kind of like how established your company is. So I appreciate that insight. Another great question, I might hand this one over to Sarah, is what are some of the tips? Some words are hard today. What are some tips for building a recruiting bench as a hiring manager?
Yeah, I think sometimes depending on like where you are in kind of like Sydney was saying, the size and maturity of the company sometimes, or just like what's happening in the environment and what other competing priorities recruiting might have, you might not have the recruiting support you need to do your sourcing. So it's something that I'm very familiar with doing my own sourcing. It can be a little scary, like especially as a coming from a solutions engineering background, you're not used to prospecting as much as like account executives might be. So I always felt a little weird, like, you know, kind of messaging people on LinkedIn, but had at least the support of my recruiting team setting up LinkedIn Recruiter and like making sure I had visibility and started searching for people. But I developed a few templates that were just kind of like a, hey, from Slack, you know, are you looking right now? It looks like you would fit kind of this, you know, what we're looking for, et cetera. Nothing revolutionary, but I think people do feel really good to have an actual hiring manager reach out to them when they look at your profile, kind of see your background, your progression at the company. So I did get quite a bit of traction by doing that. And it was often pretty light touches. But if you're willing to do some of your own sourcing, I think you get some really good quality candidates into your pipe to mix in with what some of your recruiting will do for you or support you in doing. And it helps kind of bring them beginning to end in that interview process as well, that you have built that relationship from the get-go. So I think it's nothing revolutionary, but it's just like not really being afraid to reach out to people. And if people say, no, I'm not looking right now, it's like, I'll check back in 3 months. You know, I would love to keep in touch with you. Is that okay with you? You know, so nothing that feels too intense.
Yeah, it's definitely all about that networking side. I feel like even as a hiring manager, you have to leverage networking, even though I feel like a lot of us are in this mindset of like only the job seeker needs to leverage networking in the hiring process. It works both ways, everyone. It really does. So thank you so much, Sarah. I think we have time for one more question. Liz, do you have any one question that was really exciting to you, or I can go with my choice?
Yeah, I have one on here that I saw that was asked by Paris that I'll ask the group. How are leaders in the panel driving initiatives around enablement, and what do you see as the most effective?
I'll go. I used to be a software sales trainer, or just software trainer, where we would enable our customers. And so I feel like I'm an extension of the enablement team because one, we're so tied into what sales is doing at any given time that we see so many themes. So one, there's that facet. Two, I'm so tied into what my SEs are doing at any point in time that I can lift up and say, what is the team actually needing related to skills up leveling, product updates, and making it a goal to bring something new every month to the table. And then from an onboarding perspective, you can't expect people to know something if you don't teach them. And so one of my very first projects at 6 Cents was just overhauling our onboarding process and getting a really streamlined certification to say, how do we get really bite-sized learning components every week rather than going through a whole process and expecting people to know without course correcting them at 6 weeks, 2 months. And so that's really, I think, a crux of our responsibility to the people that we manage in the business is surfacing learning opportunities. And even if there's an enablement team, really partnering with them to identify opportunities and content.
I'll just add one thing to that. Agree with everything that you said there, Sydney. One tool that we've really seen be successful over the last few years is peer-led enablement. So not just relying on institutional structures and structured enablement programs, but putting senior SEs in the room with less tenured SEs and talking about situational tactics or conflict management or role-playing different scenarios that might come up. Or dealing with newer technologies or newer updates and how to best craft stories and value props around them. That's been enormously successful because it keeps up with the pace of the business. We're on the front lines each and every day. And so the best advisors on how to deal with the adjustments that need to be made over the course of days, weeks, or months comes from those teams as well.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Those are all great ways, initiatives, and things to do. And one thing I'll just mention, because since it is a program that I do, if you have new folks coming in and you want them to be trained more on the softer skills side, please reach out to me about Foundations. It's a great 4-week course. That's all the selling that I'm going to do there. And I just want to thank all these wonderful panelists for being here today, taking time out of their very busy schedules. Really, this is some of the best in the business when it comes to hiring. And so great that we got to hear from them. I'm going to hand it off to Nina to close us out.
Yeah, so that ends our lovely panel session about hiring best practices. If you are interested in continuing the conversation, please join us in Slack. We love having questions asked, especially about best practices, job seeking, all that jazz. So please join us in the PSC Slack. I also want to extend my big thanks to all of our panelists. I'm so thankful for all your thought leadership that you've brought into this space. It's been great to hear all of your experiences, and I'm really proud of having so many great leaders in the pre-sales community. So thank you all for being here.